I am really proud of my new line of products coming out this May. Hold on. No, this doesn't feel right. There we go. So you see, with just a few lighting tweaks, I just went from being a secret witness in a crime documentary to being in a commercial for my tech startup. So let's talk about how to light for video.
It can be frustrating when you're at the stage of your filmmaking journey where you've mastered all your camera settings, but your videos still don't look as good as the commercials you see on television. Well, that's because you're not lighting your videos right, and today we're going to fix that. First, we're going to talk about how to work with film lights. Then, we'll move on to talking about how to use the sun when you're outdoors. Lights, camera, action is only a small part of the equation of what makes a video successful though. If you use video to grow your career or your business, I highly recommend you check out our online course, Make Videos Make Money. It's an in-depth exploration of how to take your videos to the next level and help you connect with your target audience and tell your stories more effectively. Now, let's shed some light on the topic of light. Light is a crucial part of telling your story. It affects the way your characters are presented to the audience, it sets the tone of your video, and it helps decide what your audience does and does not see. Let's talk about hard versus soft light. Hard light means harsh shadows. Lights that are further away or more focused are hard. See how you can see this hard edge on the shadow puppet? That's hard light. You can essentially think of all light as hard until it's bounced off something or diffused. You use modifiers in front of lights to diffuse it and make it soft. Soft light is achieved with a close-up source that is diffused. See how when we diffuse this light and make it less focused, the shadow puppet becomes an amorphous blob with soft edges? That's soft light. But when does a hard light become a soft light? That's for your artistic mind to decide. Soft light is most often used for beauty lighting. Want to make someone look pretty and make their skin look nice? Use soft light. Soft light fills in wrinkles and imperfections on the skin. Hard light creates more shadows and highlights every imperfection. Right now we're using soft light for this interview setup. Let's talk about how to light for an interview.
Today we're going to be doing an interview setup where I'm going to show you how to light for an interview with Casey here as our character for the interview.
Real quick, pay attention to the fact that I'm calling Casey my story element or character, not my interviewee. Making a good video is about telling a story visually. So think of your interviewee as your story subject and think about what you're communicating by the way you filmed them. To learn more about telling an effective story, check out our class at makevideosmakemoney.com.
All right, so the very first step before you start lighting is you have to get your camera position right. If you don't get your camera position right before you start lighting, then you're gonna set up all your lights and then realize that you want your camera slightly over here. Now all your lights are in your frame and it's all gonna be terrible. So we get our camera exactly where we want it. Casey, I think I'm really liking somewhere around here. This is perfect. So we're gonna go ahead and leave our camera just like this and we're gonna start setting up our lights. One more step before we start setting up our lights. We're actually gonna put up all of our blankets here, which are gonna not only help with sound, which is not what we're talking about today, but more so we put these up because we want to block out all of the outside light because we want to have as much control over the lighting as possible because the lighting is a massive part of telling our story and we want to tell our story our way, not have the sun outside dictate what our story is. So very first light that we're going to set up is going to be our key light. Our key light is whatever is going to illuminate our primary story element, which in this case is our character Casey. For our key light, I'm going to grab one of these two guys over here. I'm going to grab this big boy and bring it on in.
And which light is this?
This is the Aperture 300D Mark II. So I'm going to roughly get it where I want it. Casey, do be careful and watch your eyes in case this turns on when I plug it in. Always warn people before you blind them. No worse way to start an interview than by absolutely blinding your interview subject right away. All right, so we've got our light plugged in and we have it roughly placed where we want it. Now we're gonna go ahead and put a light modifier on it. A light modifier is anything that we put in front of the light in order to change the characteristics of the light. So in this case, we're gonna put this big softbox on it, which is gonna create that soft light that we talked about earlier and gonna make Casey look nice and pretty. Because Casey, we do want you to look pretty, right?
Yeah.
All right, so now Casey, we're gonna turn this light on, so watch your eyes. Striking. And there we go, our first light is now on. And obviously, Casey is completely overexposed on this camera, which is unacceptable in every single way.
I do not look pretty.
You do not look pretty, and that's not okay. So we want to always make sure that we light to the settings for our camera that we want. You know, we have control over the lighting as much as possible. So I want to set my ideal settings for this camera and then light to those settings. Honestly, I just immediately pretty much got exactly what I wanted here. Casey is very nicely exposed. This looks fantastic. We're just gonna go ahead now and move on to the next part of lighting. So as you can see in this image, Casey's sort of blending into the background right now. There's not much separation between him and the wall behind him. And Casey's our main story element. We want to highlight him. We want him to be what pops out. We don't want people to think that the background is as important to the story as Casey is. So we're gonna go ahead and change that with something called a rim light, which I'm gonna use this guy for. So I'll grab my rim light and move it on over.
And what light is this?
This is the Aperture 120D Mark II. This was my first good film light. We're gonna roughly place this light where we want it. And I'm just arming this light out because I wanna get it more above his head, and I don't wanna have the stand in the shot, because if I just put it straight up and down, the stand would be right here where my hand is, and you would see it. So Casey, I'm gonna go ahead and turn this light on now. So striking, watch your eyes. Right away, we're seeing a huge difference in how this looks. So not only is Casey separated from the background now and popping off that back wall, there's a lot more depth to our scene, because you can tell that Casey's not just right up against that wall, there is separation between the two of them. Honestly, I'm really happy with this and how it's looking. So we're gonna move on to the next step, which is gonna be to turn off these overhead lights, get all of our levels just right, and make sure that we're happy with this. All right, so let's quickly talk about the artistic choices we were making when we chose where to place this light. As you can see, we placed it at about a 45-degree angle from our character Casey. We've put it at an angle up here because we don't want to illuminate the bottom of his face.
Hey guys, super excited to talk to you all about my new startup. You see how creepy that is?
We wanted his face to look slimmer. We wanted to make sure that we gave his face contrast and depth so you can really see his features. And this is a really classic interview lighting setup. This is definitely what you see a lot in commercials or tech startup explainers, things like that. And it really works for a lot of different things. You can even use these same concepts for something like a product video where you have, instead of a character, you have a hero product. All right, so that's the basics of lighting for an interview. And if you don't already have lights like these, you can of course use what you have available if you're making your own social media videos or in your own home. You can use lamps, you can use the windows that you have access to. Whatever you have that can create light, you can use it in creative ways in order to tell your story.
Next, let's head outside and talk about using the sun.
When using the sun, you need to think about the sun as your key light. You still want it at the right height and angle from your subject to get that nice Rembrandt-style lighting. Obviously, you don't have control of where the sun goes, but you can time your scene to be just right. The best times of day to shoot are near the beginning and end of the day. The epitome of this time is called golden hour. During this time, you'll be able to get Rembrandt lighting on your character's face. Noon is the worst time to shoot because the sun is directly overhead, which is rarely what you want. Of course, we don't always have a choice, and sometimes you just have to work with what you have. When you're dealing with unideal circumstances when lighting with the sun, you can use light modifiers, like this guy, in order to get the sun to look how you want. And that's the basics of lighting your video. With some practice, your videos will start to look more and more gorgeous. But remember, just because your video looks good doesn't mean it will actually make you money or achieve your goals. Check out our course to learn more about how to tell impactful stories with your videos. Go to makevideosmakemoney.com to learn more.